All right. I've got the beautiful Kristin Rowell on the show, flexing,
Thank you.
kind
Hi,
of
Debbie.
flex muscles, showing how you
Yes,
can age gracefully, beautifully, and as I keep talking about, be stronger, faster, and more powerful as we age and not think that, oh, I'm getting older. I'm going to be fat, frumpy, rounded over, and slow.
I love it. I love it.
Turtle versus a rabbit.
Yes.
Hare, tortoise. So,
And I think it's the year of the rabbit, so that's appropriate. I'm
oh,
pretty
look at
sure that's right.
that.
Yeah. Uh, I had a bunny hole in my backyard that the golden retrievers were very interested in.
Oh.
And I had several responses on my DMs that were like, oh, and it's the year of the rabbit. And I thought, okay, that's appropriate.
I don't
Yeah.
know. We've got lots of rabbits, but we have coyotes too. So that kind of
Oh,
evens out
yes,
the,
of course.
the animals out there. Okay. So I brought you finally on the show. I've met you in person finally at KetoCon a year ago and really find it interesting for us to kind of collaborate as female athletes and endurance athletes. And as we were talking about our previous selves to our current self and really show that we can improve the aging process and how we train, how we fuel. It's going to be different than the mainstream people that have a lot of more metabolic issues than us athletes that are kind of the high performers. Chronic stress is an issue. We're always trying to think more is better. And you created Energetically Efficient business. Talk a little bit about that and kind of that summarizes too, probably who you are and what's your why and purpose to start off our conversation.
Perfect. I'll try to do it as succinctly as possible because it could be a long story. So the short version on me, Debbie, is that I was a trial lawyer for over 16 years, which means I was in court wearing a suit every day, high stress work. My firm was a litigation boutique firm, which simply means we weren't one of these massive, large firms that has all different departments of different kinds of lawyers. We literally were a trial boutique, which typically is like the top of the top. I don't say that to be boastful. I say that to be, it's really intense. Like clients refer to us as SEAL Team 6, it's like, we're not military, we're not Navy SEAL, we're actually SEAL Team 6. So that was fascinating and I loved it. And it was very hard work. And during the time that I was lawyering, I ran over 20 marathons and I became a natural professional bodybuilder, which most people are like, wait, what? But I was a driven, cortisol spiking, sympathetic dominant, fight or flight, overachieving human. And that still is kind of the base system of how I run.
Yes.
But I've literally healed a lot of those aspects of myself. And when I say healed, I'm not saying those things are bad, but I've learned how to become more balanced, become more feminine, become more parasympathetic, become more relaxed, become more law of attraction instead of constantly driving, right?
Yeah.
So
sounds like
I now
me.
serve, yes, exactly. And I now serve what I say is the old me, which is a lot of my clients are high achieving executive level humans, whether they're doctors, lawyers, dentists, mortgage brokers, investment bankers, real estate agents, business owners, moms, dads, whatever. But they're really looking for, how do I get out of this swirl of stress? And how do I start putting myself first when I haven't for so long? And a large part of what I do is to optimize people's fat loss and muscle gain at the same time. And I get really triggered when I shouldn't say really triggered because I work on not getting triggered about things and being neutral, but I do get triggered when I see people say that you can't lose fat and gain muscle at the same time, because I do it all the time in my practice. And I have bod pod after bod pod after bod pod of showing results in this way of people in their 30s, 40s, 50s, and beyond who are doing it. So I hate when people say that, but in any event, I was lawyering. I fell in December of 2013 and I broke my leg in 10 places. And that was really where my journey started in terms of how can I fuel my body better for longevity, for bone density? Why did this happen to me? And of course, I now understand that the universe brought it to me to put me on this new trajectory. So I started several years after that. I started meditating around the time I was getting really interested in nutrition. And the name Energetically Efficient came to me in a meditation that I was in 2018. Now, I was still very much lawyering and thought, what does that mean? Business? I'm not going to start a business. I'm a lawyer, and then the universe just kept bringing me signs. And so in 2019, I left to start Energetically Efficient. And now I serve humans in this new way, which is I coach high performers on how to become fitter. And I always say, when you look better and you feel better, you do better. So I tell every single client that signs up that talks to me in a discovery call, in my personal opinion, being fit and healthy is part of your job. And I very much believe that, because when you are fit and healthy, you are in a better mood, you have more energy, you are more positive, you can think more clearly, you can handle a lot more at the same time. And the clients I serve, like, you guys have to wake up and start making decisions the minute you get out of bed, and it doesn't stop. So I don't want you like yawning at your desk at 2:30 because of whatever you ate at lunch, or feeling like your belly keeps growing over your belt buckle because you're not prioritizing strength training. And so we work on all those lifestyle modifications and then their nutrition, of course, for them to get healthier. So I know that was kind of a long answer, but that's the short version on how I got here and who I serve.
I love that. And that's funny. That's probably why I feel connected to you, because 2013 is when my life changed, when it was March 2013 when I had my whole breakdown, burnout, obviously red flags after trying to drink alcohol at a mastermind retreat. And I was sick for a week and hungover. And it's like, what was wrong with me? And then I couldn't do any training. I would have to have naps in the day, and I gained 30 pounds in a few months. And I went from, top of my age group and Ironman Hawaiian marathons and couldn't do anything. It's like, what? But the same as you, is you feel like that's my purpose. Everything happens for a reason, is what I believe as well. And I feel like now it's my job to finally focus. Last couple of years, I switched to focus on helping other athletes that are similar to my previous self, and the new me is very different, but I had to change my whole life. I had to leave my past life and restart. The last couple of years, thanks to COVID, I could move out of my life and move to North San Diego and focus on following my purpose, because I think people can relate to you. They go, okay, that's me, and I want to get out of that. But how do you find your clients? Do they have to get to like rock bottom? What point do they get to really feel like, I'm going to take ownership of my health and make some changes now rather than wait? Because that's what I feel like there's so many red flags they ignore, but when are you going to finally stop and assess what you're doing?
Yeah, it's a perfect question, because I tell people all the time, I really observe, at least in the humans who hire me, or the humans who think about hiring me and then wait and come back a few months later. I say, you have to get sick and tired of being sick and tired.
Yeah.
And you have to hit your own personal rock bottom. For some people, that's, oh my God, I gained 10 pounds and I can't believe I'm in this position. I need to get these off now. For some people, it's, I am existing at 350, 400, 420 pounds, and I'm servicing clients at all of these ranges. And they are finally at a point in their life where they're like, I don't want to feel this way anymore. I have such insane risk of a heart attack. I am heavy breathing when I walk upstairs. So I service clients of all, it's not just athletes that I work with. I work with people of all different disciplines.
High performers.
Yes, high performers. And then the athletes that I work with are looking to take their activity or whatever their sport is to the next level. I even have clients I have this one, kid right now who I'm working with, whose parents hired me, and he's 14, and he really desires, because I mark my words, this child will be in the NFL as a quarterback. He's incredible. And his parents are investing a lot of money and time into helping him foster this intention of his. So I'm helping him with his nutrition, because he really desires to put on like 20 pounds of muscle this year. And so what he eats matters. How he thinks about exercise in the gym matters. You can't just go, as you know, we can't just go to the gym, throw some weights around and, be doing it sort of unconsciously. You have to be using your brain to connect to your bicep, to connect to your quadricep, to connect to your calf muscle, whatever it is that you're training in that moment, and have that mind muscle connection, because there's, of course, research that the humans who are doing that are pushing weight around versus humans who are doing that without even pushing weight around, just thinking about curling their bicep and making their bicep stronger, thinking about, doing some calf raises and really making their calf stronger, they're actually gaining muscle, which is amazing. So it's the power of the mind. I work on that with some of my athletes too. But to get back to your question, really what I see for most people is, they're the ones who have to get there. I could try and sell them all day long on why they need to hire me, because, it will change their life and they will feel better. But if they're not emotionally ready to start uncovering what got them there in the first place, it's not going to work. And I want people to hire me who aren't ready. I want to work with people who are ready.
Yeah, no, it makes a difference because there's not a pill. You have to actually do the work. And so we're coaching you up, and you need to be motivated and in the right headspace to make those changes, or else it's a waste of your time and money and our time, because we're here to help you as a coach to make you your best version of yourself. But yeah, you actually have to do the sleep hygiene routine and how you start your day, and then having purpose and planning your meals and all that stuff. It's not just this magic pill, like what someone just tell me, the new metformin pill that's out, that you can just take a pill and it'll help you lose your appetite and not eat. It's like, okay,
so
good luck.
I'll speak to that for a second because I get a lot of questions about it. So I've done a lot of research on it. So of course, the new fandangled weight loss drug that's on the market is called, it's semaglutide is the name. And then it comes in prescription names of Ozempic, Wegovy, and there's probably one or two others. So I've done some research on this. My good friend, Mike Mutzel, Metabolic Mike, who has high intensity health, has done some really good short YouTube videos reporting on some of the science. What I tell clients who ask me about it is, and I do have one client who hired me, who was already on it when he hired me. But this particular individual is 40 years old, has already had a severe cardiovascular event with his heart. He's over 400. He's about 350 pounds, or was when he started. So for someone like him, semaglutide he is using it in conjunction with his physician. I think of it as training wheels, right? He's not doing it and thinking, this is my magic pill that's going to solve all my problems. I'm going to use this to really learn about how to eat to satiety, stop when I'm satiated. And I'm also hiring Kristin, who's helping me get in a strength training program, making sure I'm walking my 10,000 steps a day, making sure my sleep hygiene is good, fueling my body with good nutrition, so that when he takes the training wheels off, which he'll decide to do with his doctor, he now has a runway of, I am learning this new lifestyle. The person who goes on the semaglutide doesn't implement any of these lifestyle practices, doesn't start to eat well. Because semaglutide is a GLP-1 antagonist, which simply means it's a glucagon-like peptide antagonist. It creates a feeling of satiety because it makes you feel like you're full when you're not really full. It works with the simplest way to describe it is it works with your gut and your stomach to make you feel like you're full, because it involves the pancreas as well. So there is some risk of pancreas related diseases, including pancreatic cancer with long-term use. There is some risk, and this is just based on what I've read in terms of the research. There is some risk of a loss of bone density, because in the clinical trials that they did with this, a significant portion of the weight that people were losing was lean muscle tissue, which of course you and I are like, absolutely not. We do not want people losing lean muscle tissue. And then the other thing that makes me nervous about this particular drug, which of course Big Pharma is making tremendous amounts of money on, is it does appear to have some sort of impact on joints, tendons, and ligaments. And I'm like, guys, for aging, absolutely not. Like, we got to preserve that stuff. So between the pancreatic stuff, between the bone density issues and muscle mass, and between the joints, tendons, and ligaments, I prefer that people don't take it unless it's sort of a quote unquote emergency situation where they use it for a very short period of time as training wheels, because they have to take weight off while they learn about how to fuel their body more appropriately. So I didn't, I'm sure you and I didn't intend to talk about that, but I get a lot of questions about it. So here we are.
This client was telling me about it yesterday, and I haven't really looked into it. So thank you. I think it is, building your foundations up before you exercise. Don't go do 3 reps of chest press, heavy weight as you can, until you build a foundation up first. Or if it's exogenous ketones that people can take to help curb some appetite, maybe sometimes those things are beneficial to get you started. And then you realize, okay, I'm not really hungry, and I'm actually eating when I am feeling hungry, not just craving food. So, okay. So let's get into fueling and training, not just athletes, but in general, as we are aging, and those that are high performers, we talk about that chronic stress. And if we have that overdrive, more is better, thrive on chaos, how do you find it works to gain muscle and lose fat? And, the chronic cardio, the endurance athlete, marathons, 50K, a lot of people think, okay, I'm going to lose weight, I'm going to do more cardio. So what have you found as we get to the other side in life, 50 and older, how do we gain muscle and lose fat weight? Simple terms.
Yes. So
Complications, I'm sure.
yeah, the way that I think about it is with the population that I'm serving and with the key person that you just mentioned, which is the, more sympathetic dominant, stressed out, cortisol spiking, etc. The vast majority of those people who work with me are on some measure of a blood sugar roller coaster. So that's number one. So I start with getting them off the blood sugar roller coaster. And the reason that I'm doing that first is because it has a twofold purpose. Number one, it's going to really start to minimize the stress in their body because, as you and I know from our nutritional therapy training, that blood sugar has a massive, massive impact on stress in the body. And it really contributes to the taxing of the adrenal glands, which they already have the taxing of. And just for your listeners who may not know, your adrenal glands are small glands that sit atop your kidneys, and they regulate the stress in your body because they are the glands that secrete cortisol, and they do a lot of other important functions. So when your adrenal glands are overworked and you're constantly stressed out and you are up against deadlines, have a million clients, don't sleep enough, are pounding your body with caffeine all morning, are drinking at night, like you just, this whole picture of what I would say is the old me is already so stressed out. So the first thing I do is I get them off that blood sugar roller coaster. And I do that by dramatically reducing their consumption of carbohydrates and dramatically increasing the amount of fat that they're consuming. Now, I'm also, of course, keeping protein at a pretty high level. I tell clients all the time what I do and what I recommend for most people. And keep in mind, of course, everyone is bio-individual, so we can't say there's a magic formula for everyone. But I like to do what I refer to as a cross between the zone diet and keto. So it's not super, super, super high fat where you modulate protein too low and carbs at nothing, but it's not with fat so low that you're more in a zone state where you're doing like 30% of your calories from carbs. So I really recommend that people, and this is a quick win for anyone who wants to just try this on their own, I recommend that people focus on getting about 30% of their calories from protein, 10% of their calories from carbs, and I'm fine if you track net carbs, and then 60% of their calories from fat. Now, some weeks it might be 50% fat and 35% protein, or 15% carbs, or 25% protein, or 55% fat. But as a general rule, a 30-10-60 split, I find works extremely well for taking off fat and gaining lean muscle tissue and minimizing the amount of stress that they have in the body. Going beyond the nutrition aspect, and I could spend a lot of time, you and I could talk about that, and we can come back to it, but going into the workout stuff, there's no question as we age, we have to get more intentional about our exercise. Gone are the days of, I'm going to run 3 hours every Saturday morning, and then I'm going to bike for 5 on Sunday, and I'm going to do an hour of cardio in the morning, and I'm going to lift for an hour every other day. And it's like, no, it's not efficient. And my business is called Energetically Efficient. B, no one has that kind of time when they get into later stage in life where they've got jobs and kids and all sorts of different responsibilities. C, it's actually too taxing on your body from a stress standpoint. So we need to be more intentional about our exercise. So people laugh and they're like, wait a second, there's no way I believe you, but it's true. I became a natural professional bodybuilder, strength training twice a week for 30 minutes each. People think that's crazy, but I say this is quality over quantity. Now, yes. I also do some cardio. I also do some stuff that has some smaller movement strength training with like the 3 and 5 pound weights on occasion, just to get like some of the littler muscles. But when I do a half an hour strength training session in the gym, I am going hard. I am like breathing. I am going to failure. I am exhausting my muscles. And my intention when I'm there is to build as much lean tissue as I can. That's my intention. Then with my cardio, I happen to be someone who enjoys running. So I do still do it, but I'm more intentional about the kind of running I do. I'm more like, we're going to do some fat burning, lower intensity stuff that might be a little longer on occasion. And then we're going to do these intentional sprint type of workouts because sprinting is so important as we age. So the way that I tell clients to think about exercise is, if I could get every one of my clients strength training twice a week and just focusing on, in the beginning, walking over 10,000 steps a day, I'd be happy. Then we can figure out what else are we going to do on top of that to really get your body to be maximizing all of the health benefits. But those are the two things that are of most importance. And I can go into why in terms of what those give us bang for buck for our metabolism, but I'll take a breath in case you want to, respond to any of that.
Yeah, thanks. I really love that because I'm laughing at the 5-hour bike ride and 3-hour run because I seriously did that for 15. Let's say I started doing Ironman 2001, adrenal exhaustion 2013, kept trying, a couple more years until it's like, okay, this is not working anymore. That is causing.
I really said it because I was thinking about you. I'm like, I know what she was doing on Saturday because I have those clients too. And I mean, I didn't do Ironmans, but I did lots and lots of marathons. And so it's just, we're in this hamster wheel. And by the way, I'm doing a marathon later this year. So I'm going to get back out there since COVID, but my training is going to be very different than it was pre-COVID. My training is going to be very different now than it was when I was in my 30s. It's different. It's more intentional. And the fuel that I do now is so different than the first 20 marathons I ever ran. It's different.
Yeah. Well, I always did heart rate training for years. I did, like Sally Edwards. I worked with her. Oh God, I always feel so old saying this, but 1995, I think we started doing heart zone training, and I helped her with the Dan Skin triathlon camps. And then I started doing metabolic testing in 2005. And then I just bought Pinoy metabolic testing kit that I start here next month. And it's a suitcase size, so I can take it with me places and test people and find out, okay, what are your true zones? Zone 1 to 5 being 5 your sprints, 20, 30 seconds. And zone 2 is zone 2 where you're burning your peak fat and before the metabolic crossover point. So really learning how to personalize training program and then put that with everything else.
What is that testing called? I would love to do that. If I ever, next time you and I run into each other, you can do it on me. I would love it.
Yeah. Well, come on out to San Diego. I'm starting some practicing this month on the different protocols. So you can fly out and I'll test you for free.
Okay. Amazing. I'd love to.
So it's fascinating because I always feel, what we say, test and not guess, really figure out what's going on inside, but how you should train and how I train now, because as you say, doing more sprints. And so in the old me training for a marathon, I would be doing, say, 4 runs a week and then cross training, but probably, I don't know, I feel like now I'm getting slower. So I need more speed work. And you always have to think, what changes as we get older? I get slower and I need more sprints and more strength and more hill repeats and stuff like that. So I think that's the important part. What are you grabbing?
I was grabbing this one. Did you read this one yet? Fast Over 40.
Oh, that's the girl in Hawaii.
She's the one in Hawaii, but Fast Over 40. It's a very, very short book. It's paperback. I love it. It talks about and goes into the science about how important sprinting is for getting us faster as we age. And it's got all sorts of physical benefits like releasing more BDNF. It's got some, as I understand it, I believe it has some like dopamine and serotonin benefits as well.
Yes.
So I went out for a run the other day just to sort of test where I was at because my marathon training starts soon. And so I did my normal 7-mile route, which, to be perfectly honest, Debbie, I had not done for a long time. And I ran this route I've been doing this for over 20 years, some version of it. So I went out and I had used Map My Run, which I haven't been using, but I've been training a lot on the treadmill and doing a lot of sprint workout. And from 2 years ago, I was 4 seconds faster doing the exact same route. And of course, I'm 2 years older. And it's a testament to the fact that I've been doing this sprint workout on the treadmill and making sure I'm at least maintaining my speed. And now the intention between now and October, when I run my marathon, is how do I work on getting faster? How do I work on getting more efficient and faster as I'm aging so that I can show up on race day and have my best race yet? And I can't wait for it because I'm going to prove to people it's possible, which is fun.
I think when you've done races for so long as we have a good endurance base and you have muscle memory, I believe. And so it's easy for me to go longer, even if I might have to walk, but my body knows how to go long. What it needs to learn how now is how to go fast. And it's that fight as we get older to do more the strength, I think, and hill repeats and, just work on training differently, as we said, I think is an important part. So with your fueling and training, if for you as an athlete, an aging athlete, how do you find fueling for your training? Is it fasted, not, no carbs, 0 carbs? Can I say carb timing? And then people that are doing carnivore, it's like, well, I'm not going to go eat beef jerky and go for a run, but what to eat before, during, and after, or when not to eat. What have you found?
So I am a morning exerciser.
Me
And
too.
that is from all of my years of lawyering. If I did not do it in the morning before I got to the office, there's no chance I could guarantee I'd get it done in the day because I don't have control a lot of times over the end of my day. Now,
Mhm.
obviously, I own my own business. I have more control over it now, but I still, for so many different reasons, excuse me, I really enjoy doing it in the morning. It sets my day right.
Me
It
too.
wakes me up. It makes me feel better. I make better nutritional choices. I'm in a better mood. You name it. It's the best thing for me to start the day. I personally choose to do it fasted. And the reason is I'm now such a fasted exerciser that my body knows how to do it and it does it really well. However, what I do differently now, and I would say it depends on what I'm training for, and I work with this in clients too. So, a week from now, I'm going to be on stage for another bodybuilding show. So I'm a natural professional bodybuilder. So my nutrition this month looks very different than it might in another month, because as a general rule, I'm focusing more on that kind of 30, 10, 60 ratio that I told you about. This month, I'm actually doing a rotational carb cycling. And I actually think that's a fantastic thing for women, especially to consider if they are doing more high intensity exercise, which I recommend. So I am doing 3 days of low carb, 1 day of high carb, 3 days of low carb, 1 day of high carb, 3 days of low carb, 1 day of high carb. And that cycle is what I do when I get ready for a bodybuilding show, because it's extremely effective in taking off fat and putting on lean muscle tissue at the same time. Now, I also, though, to be clear, and I don't think this is realistic for people, which is why my preps are usually only 4 weeks in length, because it's a lot, is I'm eating 5 or 6 times a day. And normally I would never do that. I would never recommend that clients do that unless they're prepping for a photo shoot or a show or something. I'm not going to do that when I get ready for the marathon. More realistic to me is 3 to 4 times. And if I'm doing some more longer fasting, I might be eating 2 to 3 times a day. What I find though is I think this is getting at your question, I'm sure you see this with your clients as well. When it comes to the stressed out, adrenal fatigued, cortisol spiking, overachiever who wants to do all these races and all this stuff, they're pushing the pedal on so many stressors that it is inhibiting or hampering their progress rather than helping it. So what I tell people is, if you are going to sprint on a treadmill or outside, that requires glycogen, period. Sprinting is a glycolytic activity. Okay. I don't care how fat adapted you are. I don't care if you are the keto queen or king of the world. Once you start sprinting, your body is going to search for glucose within it, and it's going to find it. And if it doesn't find it, it's going to make it. So where is it going to make it from? Well, let's say you had sweet potato, jasmine rice, a banana, oats, something a couple days ago, and you haven't really done much activity. It's going to find that stored glycogen in your liver, in your skeletal muscle, and it's going to start using it to fuel that sprint. If you didn't eat those things, guess what, folks? It is going to start breaking down your lean muscle tissue to create glucose to order to fuel that sprint. So now you're working with two conflicting goals. Assuming, by the way, you're the person who wants to get faster and not break down all your lean muscle tissue. So I think it's naive for people to pretend that you can be strict keto and never have a carb up and never eat carbohydrates and become a good sprinter. If you want to be a really good walker and you want to be a good bodybuilder, you can do those ketogenic. There's no question, because you can be doing some powerlifting or some things that wouldn't necessarily be glycolytic. It can really draw upon your fat stores and can draw upon ketones for fuel. But when you get into that sprinting stage and you need glycogen, it's just the way it works that you need carbs. So the night before the marathon of my fastest marathon, which was in 2015, when I already transitioned into being a fat fueled athlete, I had asparagus, filet, and butter. I didn't eat pasta. And it was my fastest marathon yet. Why? Because I was fat fueled and I started out as a fat burner. I think I had 1 packet of coconut butter that morning for my food, and then I was great. I didn't have any goose. I didn't hit the wall, but I'm in a marathon. If that was a 5K, wouldn't have been the same kind of food.
Mhm.
I would have eaten something different because of my 5K pace is way faster than my marathon pace. So it's really being specific about what is my intention here, and then understanding the body and knowing what sort of fuel you need for the different activity you're about to engage in, if you want to do well at it and excel and feel good doing it. Is that helpful?
Yeah, no, that's what I keep talking about, that you have to actually look at what the purpose is of that workout, and then look at, when did I last eat? What did I eat? Do I need to fuel or not fuel? And I've done fasted training for what year is it? Like, I don't know, 15 years. I feel like I got into it. Well, not that much, but long time since I did metabolic efficiency testing, 2005 on. Then Bob Seebehor, I did a USA triathlon certification where he was talking about, we don't need all these gels. And I was like, yeah, I totally get it. And that was 2009, and started doing the bulletproof coffee and not eating any food for a long time until I was hungry in a workout. And I probably did it too much, I said. But now it is different than, okay, I'm trying to do speed work. If my goal is to improve my performance, if I'm trying to hit higher numbers on the bike, doing a functional threshold power workout, so I'm hitting higher watts, should I be so low carb? So we've been talking all year about, carb timing, but nature's carbs, not eating crap in a muffin or a bagel or something, but eat a sweet potato. It's finally, we get so strict and being so strict keto. And now people are so strict carnivore, not listening to your own intuition that maybe I could have a sweet potato or have a russet potato in bacon fat. I think that's where I find it's psychological, that we get so type A driven, ambitious, that we get so set in the rules that we hear out here, but don't apply them to our own unique bio-individuality and look at our own stress, our own lifestyle, our own timing of workouts, and the intensity and duration. And like I said, is it morning or is it afternoon? And what did I eat? If I stopped eating at 2:00 in the afternoon the day before, but I'm not doing carbs, is my workout sucky or is it great? So there's so much to it.
Yeah. And those are great points, because the talk I'm going to give at Hard to Kill Summit in July is going to be all about this. It's because one of the things I see people doing, and it's a very, very common problem, and this is frankly part of the reason I have the career that I do, people are so overwhelmed with all of the information that's out there that they're like, well, I'll try this intermittent fasting thing. And, I was doing carnivore for a little bit, and then I thought, oh, maybe I'll go vegan. And then I did this, and then I was like, high carbs, low carbs. And most people aren't giving any of these things enough of a chance to actually see what their body really needs, or what works best for their body. So for the carb example that I just gave you, the 3 days of low carb and 1 day of high carb that I do when I'm getting ready for a bodybuilding show works very well for me. How did I discover that? Because way before I started doing this for a living, I hired someone to help with my nutrition. When I started bodybuilding, I was lawyering. I didn't have time to do the research myself. I wasn't as into it as I am now. Obviously, I hadn't gone to school yet. And so she programmed for me for getting ready for my first bodybuilding show. She knew that I was really intending, because I, by that time, was very low carb. I said, I don't want to have a bunch of carbs. She goes, okay, well, I'm going to ask you if we can just do a carb up a week then. So I did 6 days of low carb, 1 day of high carb. Well, guess what the high carb day was? The high carb day was, wait for it, 300 grams of carbohydrates. Okay. That is, I mean, I know that's standard American diet amount, but for me, being a low carb person, that was so awful. I was so full. I had gut rot. I didn't feel good. And it was things like, I made pancakes. I had sweet potato. She did have me have a little bit of pasta at that time, which I can't do gluten. So that was probably part of the problem. But when I started training for my next bodybuilding show the following year, I said, look, I can't possibly do that many carbs in a day. So then what we did, she goes, okay, let's do this. 3 days low carb, 1 day high carb, and high carb for you is going to be 150. Then we're going to do 3 days low carb, then high carb for you. And low carb is like about 50, 60 carbs, maybe even closer to 100. But then my high carb day went up to 150. Okay. So that worked for me. That worked for me because I could digest and assimilate. And then what I would find is in my strength training sessions, when I allowed myself that many carbohydrates, every fourth day, I really started to feel stronger. I really started to put on some lean tissue because I had more raw materials to really push myself energetically in those workouts, and still allowed myself to do my running and sprinting and other things on the side that I enjoyed, because I wasn't so depleted all the time. So I'm telling you that, Debbie, because I think one of the things I want to encourage everyone to consider is really just try something on your body for 30 days. I discovered what worked for me and what didn't because I did 2 different 30-day experiments. 300 grams of carbohydrates on a Sunday for 4 weeks. I didn't enjoy. I thought I would love it. I didn't enjoy it. So what did work for me and what got me even, leaner than the other 300 grams of carbohydrates was doing 150 every 4th day. And so the other thing I just want to mention about this nutrition thing, because I think this is where people really, really go wrong, is keep in mind that fat and carbohydrates are our 2 sources of energy. Protein is the macronutrient that we use for recovery, that we use to build muscle, but fat and carbs are energy sources. Why does that matter? It matters because when one goes up, the other must come down. When the other one goes up, the other one must come down. If you titrate fat up, carbs got to go down. When you titrate carbs up, fat's got to go down, period. On my high carb days where I'm doing 150 grams of carbohydrates, even close to 200 some days, depending, my fat is at like 40 grams or 50 grams. It's very low, which I would normally not do, but I'm doing that because I'm intentionally increasing my carbohydrate to change up the fuel I'm using that day. And I'm intentionally decreasing the fat because I don't need that fat when I have that much carb.
Yeah, because you don't want high carb, high fat.
Exactly. Because I tell clients all the time, I go, that's how we got fat. This is what makes you fat. Because in nature, you do not find carbs and fat together. This is man-made food. This is brownies, donuts, pizza, nachos, ice cream, mac and cheese, you name it. That's all carbs and fat together. When you're in nature, let's pretend we're in prehistoric times and you're the caveman or cavewoman out hunting for your family, you would be like, oh, I'm so depleted. I got to go find that animal to kill it. My family's back in the cave starving. You might stumble upon some berries and you would eat those for fuel. You might find a mango. You would stumble upon a banana tree. All those things are carbs by themselves. Then you finally kill the animal, okay? And you bring that home to the family. And now what is that filled with? Protein and fat. Protein and fat are often together in nature. Eggs, no carbs, lots of protein and fat. Salmon, no carbs, lots of protein and fat. Filet mignon, no carbs, lots of protein, little fat. Ribeye, no carbs, lots of fat and protein. So my point is, and granted, I gave all animal examples, but even if you take like quinoa, which has carbs and protein, it's still not carbs and fat. I always tell people the one exception I like to say is that cashews, which, most nuts are a good source of fat. Cashews are the highest carbohydrate nut. So I tell people to be very careful with them because they are very easy to overeat because they're kind of akin to ice cream, especially if they have really good salt on them. But the only place we truly, truly find carbs and fat together in nature is in breast milk. And breast milk is designed to make babies, small humans, grow into big humans very fast. It's a growth mechanism when we put carbs and fat together. So if people remember nothing else about this episode of your podcast, remember when you bring fat down, you can put carbs up. And when you bring carbs down, you can put fat up. You can't put carbs and fat up together, period.
Good. Yeah, makes sense. Okay. With that then, post-workout training, if you're doing strength training or cardio or sprints, how are you fueling as an individual? But what have you found female versus male or any differences?
Yeah, good question. I definitely acknowledge that females are more hormonally complex than males.
Yes.
And I know there was some recent research that came out that seemed to think that, I shouldn't say seemed to think, there was some recent research came out that apparently reported that you don't need to change up the nutritional stuff depending on a woman's cycle. Did you see this? This was kind of viral on social media. And there were lots of women responded that were really, really upset. And I said, look, this is why I often say science is good for a tool, but your best tool is your own body.
Yeah.
Am I hungrier the week before my cycle? Okay, you're not crazy, woman. You're normal because your hormones are changing the week before your cycle, and you actually do need more carbohydrate the week before your cycle. Then if you combine the fact that you're in intense training, then combine the fact that you're doing some sprinting, you might need some more carbs. So for me, to answer your question about how I think about it, I really like to stick to something that's a routine, like the 3 days low, 1 day high, 3 days low, 1 day high, regardless of what days I'm training, because I just feel like for me that works out better because my training could change depending on my schedule, depending on my travel. And I'd rather that something stay consistent. But when I'm not in bodybuilding training and I'm training for a marathon, I'm just living my regular life, I will do mostly low carb And then if all of a sudden I have a day where I feel like I'm a little depleted, I haven't had carbs in a while, I notice that in my blood sugar monitor, which I often wear, I've really been in the 70s and 80s a lot, and I haven't had any higher carb, I'll do an intentional carb up that day because I know I need them. And so I'll do it more intuitively with what my body wants. For clients who are female, I will put their carbs a little bit higher the week before their cycle. So I make sure that they figure out and know when their cycle is. For women that don't have a cycle, I'll say, let's just pepper it in on occasion around your training. So if you had a really, really hard sprint session and you felt real depleted, I know we need to get some more carbs in you. If you have a hard sprint session coming up and you know you've been more low carb for a while, then the day before that sprint session, we're going to put your carbs up so that your sprint session is more fun the next day. Because who wants to sprint when you're gassed? There's nothing worse, right? So it's so individual for the person. I wish I could give you a better answer, but it's very individualized. And also, because I have so many of my clients practicing intermittent fasting, because it's such a superpower for people who are high functioning executive level humans, I always say we've got to balance the fasting with the fueling. We can't be fasting all the time and eating low carb and sprinting and strength training and never kind of going away from that mode, that sort of dogmatic way of looking at things, because it's going to start to affect your performance and, more importantly, your hormone function, specifically your cortisol. I always say, when you're getting advice from people, and there's a lot of different opinions on this online, look at the human. Look at what they look like. Look at their energy. Do they seem vibrant? Do they practice what they preach? Are they lean and fit? Do they look like someone you want to look like? What is it about them that's attractive to you? And don't just dogmatically follow a message unless you actually feel that what the person is saying truly resonates with you. And that's going to be different for everyone. But, you and I know there's a lot of people out in this space that are very, this is the way to do it, and this is the only way. And I completely disagree with that. And so I say, look at the person. Are they too thin? Are they too stressed out? Does their skin look ashen? Are they very vibrant? Do they appear to have a lot of energy? Do they look at those things and then say, okay, so I can take some of what they're saying, but I'm going to just apply it periodically for me. I'm not going to be so dogmatic about it and do it every single day.
No, I so agree. I mean, that's what we stand for in nutritional therapy is bioindividuality. Eat real food that balances your blood sugar. Every stress response is a blood sugar response. And really looking at all those things that we learn in our course, that is so essential to know that there is not one size fits all approach. And you have to, take this information, use it as a template, and then create your own N=1 experiment and journey and course correct as you go. Because it's not always going to be the same, and seasonal almost too.
Exactly. That's literally what my talk is about. It's you are your own N=1 experiment. So get experimenting. That's my talk. Because the reality is that's how we all learn about our bodies. You can read every book on the planet, listen to every influencer, watch what everyone else is doing, but what works for you? And so many people are so used to giving their power away to other people and just dogmatically following whatever it is that person tells them to do. It's like, no. So I tell my clients all the time, I'm like, I get real excited when you start deviating from the meal plans I'm writing for you and you start going rogue, so to speak, with swapping out the dinner because you want to do something different that night, changing up one meal, and then you play with Chronometer, which is the professional tracking subscription that I use. I love that app.
Me too.
Yeah, so you play with that, and then I can see what you're doing because you're part of my professional subscription, and I can give you feedback. For example, I have one client who, and I see this a lot with women, it's like the protein component is hard for them. They're just so programmed to eat nothing but carbs all day long that figuring out sources of protein, swapping out protein for another, that's just not their focus. And I have one client in particular who her pattern is she can easily find other sources of fat. It's I'll add the cream to this. I'll have another avocado. And I said, look, I've been watching you for the last week on Chronometer. I'm purposely letting you do this so that you can learn. You notice that your protein keeps going down and down and down when I leave you to your own devices. So I said, let's course correct. Let's get you back on following the plan for just a few days. Watch how much more satiated you are. Watch how much better you feel. And then you'll realize, oh my gosh, I was overeating all those calories because my body was actually trying to find more protein. And because I wasn't thinking intentionally with protein, I was reaching for all these fat sources. I was not only overeating calorically, but I was also continuously hungry. Because you, of course, as you and I know, protein is the most satiating macronutrient, no question. And I'm getting ready for this bodybuilding show, and I've got to eat 200 grams of protein a day. And let me tell you, it is not easy. I can only do this for so long. It's hard. It's hard. So I don't recommend, by the way, that people do that for a very long term. This is just a 4-week thing that I do for my body. And it's very effective in losing fat and building muscle, but it's also very hard to do because you have to dose it 5 to 6 times a day in order to make it effective, which is tough.
Yeah, I gotta drink it as well, which I'm having my post-workout whey, and I forgot to bring my creatine in here, but having a little something. Bless you. So I think it is important to point out, everybody, it is by individuality, and it is so much how you're, I look at people's stressors as well as, females look at their time of the month, but how to fuel or not to fuel, what time of the day you're working out, what intensity that is, if it's really anaerobic. Because I think a lot of people, now that I'll start testing, I'll learn this more, if what people are doing for their high intensity, is it really all out? Because it's so hard. I've talked a lot about this, to really go zone 5 or do those 20-second, 30-second all out. Because I started wearing my heart rate monitor again because I got my battery fixed, and it's tough. I can't get my heart rate up to 165 is my hard. And I wasn't doing it. I was like 130, 140 all the time. So really finding out, are you going hard as you can to make it truly a sprint workout is tough.
That's why I think for people, it's really important to consider, when you start doing this for sprinting, to consider doing it on a treadmill. Even though a treadmill makes it easier than running outside, you can challenge yourself by knowing what the pace is on the treadmill. So for me, and I know I'm going all out.
I did this morning.
Yeah, I run hard and fast. And when I get into my last couple sprints, this might sound crazy to most people, but I can do them at 12.0 on the treadmill, which is fast. I can sprint for 30 seconds or even a minute at 9, 10. And then when I get into 30 seconds, 20 second, go 11. And I can do a few 12.0 at 20 seconds, but I know that's all out, right? For me. And I'm pretty dead, and I could fall off the treadmill. So if I was to go and do that outside, it's not, if I hadn't trained to actually turn my legs over at that insane speed, there's no way I'd be hitting that outside on the pavement if I hadn't started to work on that. But I don't know if you follow any of the work of Joel Green. I just love him.
Yes.
I've taken some coaching courses with him. I've read the Immunity Code. Oh. He says, and this is something that I've reflected on it and been like, this is so interesting. The sign of aging well across all animals in the animal kingdom is being able to get up and run as fast as you can and sprint from a dead stop. Now, I don't recommend doing that right away. And he says that too, because most people get injured. But if you can train yourself to do that, if you can run away from a predator and get into a state of sprinting fast without any warm-up whatsoever, you literally are way younger. You have young muscle. Part of the reason I have such muscularity at, I'm in my late 40s, approaching 50, is because I've been strength training for so long. I have such young muscle because I started strength training when I was 14. Now, I didn't do it consistently throughout. I got back into it in my early 20s. But when you start that young and you do it consistently, you really train that tissue to be younger. And I don't want that to be discouraging to people, because I say you can start at any age. One of the people that I just admire so much, and I share her stuff a lot on social media, is Train with Joan McDonald. So if people go to trainwithjoanofficial.com, or if they follow Train with Joan on Instagram, this woman at 70 years old was 5'3", weighed 198 pounds, and had a 39-inch waist. At 70, I want to say she's 77 now, by the age of 75, she was this svelte, gorgeous goddess, because she started strength training, started being intentional about what she put in her mouth, and she has put on a tremendous amount of muscle in her 70s. So it's never, ever, ever too late, ever.
Yeah, love that. Hey, last little bit, because we're going to run out of time. I need like 3 hours with you. The thoughts on fasting, because we talked about this before. I think so many people are fasting and they're already stressed out, or they're athletes exercising a lot and they're having a full-time job and they've got a lot going on. Have you found recommendations for people to do intermittent fasting 16-8 or, 12 to 15 hours for women? What is kind of your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it'll be different for every woman for sure. But when they start working with me, I have them, I don't tell them they're doing this, but I have them intermittent fasting from the get-go only for 12 or 13 hours. Because keep in mind, this is what people forget. When you don't eat for 12 hours, you are fasting.
Yes.
Okay. So 8 p.m., you stop eating. You don't eat until after 8 a.m. And if you got up early and went and did your workout and you come back and have a breakfast, you're already fasted for 12 hours. So there isn't some magic into forcing people to do 16-8 if it's not what works for their body and it's not what works for their physiology. Now, I do think that there is for sure benefits to doing 16-8 and 18-20 and 24 hours and 36-hour fasts dosed appropriately over time, especially for my clients who have a lot of fat to lose. You know, I would love my clients that have a tremendous amount of fat to lose once they're ready, which is several weeks into our work together. I encourage them to consider one 36-hour fast per week, meaning don't eat on Monday. So you eat dinner Sunday night and you don't eat until Tuesday morning. But that would be for someone who's not as athletic and who's really just working on steps and strength training. For people who are athletic and are cortisol spiking and those kinds of things, right now, for example, for this whole month, I'm not fasting. And many people think of me as the intermittent fasting queen, because I've done 5-day fasts, I've done 72-hour fasts, and it's got to be appropriate to when and where. So when I do a longer fast, I'm not doing glycolytic activity. I'm not sprinting when I'm in a 36-hour fast. I'm not sprinting when I'm doing a 5-day fast for sure. I'm doing gentle walking and doing some, 30 minutes of strength training. So I think just making sure that it's appropriate to the person and giving, especially women, permission that keep in mind, you are still fasting if you stop eating at 8 and you don't eat breakfast until 8 a.m. That's still a fast. And so women can just relax into, you're getting a lot of benefit. At 12 hours of fasting, human growth hormone increases a fair amount. So it really benefits your strength training, which is great. And then of course at 16-8 is when fat burning begins. I have an former executive client, who really had a lot of success with 18-6, and she loves it. She loves fasting for 18 hours and then eating in only a 6-hour window. But I will say, with this client in particular, he doesn't have a lot of lean muscle tissue, despite me preaching about it and telling her, we got to put more muscle on your body. It's not a priority to her. Her priority is, I like to be this number on the scale, because she's still sort of, in my opinion, focused more on that like 1990s, the number on the scale matters more than the body fat percentage. And I care way more about the body fat percentage than the number on the scale, especially as we age. And, she'll get there when she gets there. I'm not going to force her. You can lead a horse to water, that whole saying. But I hate to see this with some women who are still stuck in that mentality, because they're going to be the ones who at 70 are breaking a hip because they're not focused on the strength training and the bone density. And it's like, I can only warn you so much about this. You've got free will. You make decisions yourself. And I'm just here to educate you and get you. A lot of women will say to me, oh my God, I wish I would have known this in my 30s. I wish I would have done this in my 30s. And it's like, stop. This is where you are now. You're ready to accept that you need to build muscle. Let's just focus on doing as much of it as we can now.
Yeah. And that's what I say all the time, is train now for your future self. How do you want to be living and showing up to life 10, 20, 30 years from now? Because my mom's 82 almost this next month. And I just watch her and all her friends. And if I go to Palm Desert, where she lives, and you see everyone in their 55 and older community, the ones that in the gym or not in the gym, it's like, you know what? This is a choice. And we don't have to look like this and walk like that and be so rounded over and weak, and I can't balance. I can't, sit down on the toilet without it's just amazing. The stuff that happens as you age that is so by choice that people didn't know about it.
One of my closest girlfriends has this just gorgeous mother who, I want to say her mom is somewhere between 75 and 80. And she is in Florida, vibrant, young. I want to say this woman walks 5 miles a day, maybe 6. You would think the woman is 55 when you look at her. Yeah. You cannot believe she's the age she is. And it's because she takes such good care of herself. I mean, there's a reason the saying is, if you don't use it, you will lose it. And that's very
say that
for your muscles.
I know.
So I say that all the time. Right. Yeah. You and I are so aligned on so many things, Debbie. This has been so fun.
Funny. Well, thanks for coming on the show and sharing your time. I know you're super busy and making a huge impact in our community and inspiring so many people to live their best lives and be their best self. So I appreciate that. So I will put all the links in the show notes, guys. And where's the best place to send people to your YouTube? Where's
Yeah,
your
I would say
place?
just Energetically Efficient. So my website is Energetically Efficient. And if you go to my website, it's got my links to YouTube, Instagram, all the socials. And so I'm most active on Instagram and YouTube.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Good
Thank
luck.
you.